أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد
وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أرواحنا له فداء أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله صدق الله العلي العظيم
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
and Jumah Mubarak. First and foremost, I advise myself for taqwa, consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and piety. And then I advise each of you for taqwa, consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to be pious. Taqwa, to be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or to be pious. The first, as I mentioned before, is perhaps the better translation. To be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every action, is the foundation of spirituality, the foundation of our ma'rifah, our irfan, our connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one example of this is one of the teachers of akhlaq, who his death anniversary is actually tomorrow on the 29th of January, Muhammad Ismail Dulabi. And for those who know Farsi, then they will be able to have access to his some of his lectures. But he is a very interesting individual because he's a simple person. He was a very simple man, but he was known as among the urafa, not simply just among the common folks, but even among the ulama. He was considered an arif. And he would often in Tehran, he would give like classes, give talks, lectures. People would come to his discussions. Muhammad Ismail Dulabi, as I said, he was a very common man. He was a person who was a farmer. As a young man, this is what he did in his life. But he took time to, again, connect himself to the Quran and connect himself to that sirat of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus wasalam. Though he was a simple person, as we mentioned, stated that Haj Aga Dulabi, as they would call him, or Haj Ismail Dulabi, he would often read the Quran. He would also go to the classes or the lectures of the ulama. And this is one of the things that he would do often. He would spend time sitting and listening to the discussions of the ulama, their classes, and particularly their classes on akhlaq, their classes on spirituality. Among these scholars that Haj Muhammad Ismail Dulabi, he would go and he would sit in, was the classes of Ayatollah Shahabadi, Ayatollah Muhammad Shahabadi. Right? Ayatollah Shahabadi, if those of you who may not be familiar with him, he was also one of the teachers of Imam Khomeini, Ayatollah Imam Khomeini, Ruhollah Khomeini, Rahmatullah alayh. So Haj Ismail, he didn't become a scholar because he was a farmer, simple, common person. But because he practiced and he put into practice what he had heard and what he had learned from the scholars, and then he also shared that with individuals, which is pretty much in line with the advice of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus wasalam. One of those advices we see where Imam Ali alayhi afdalus wasalam, he categorizes people. He says people are three types. He says alimun rabbaniyun. So either a person is a enlightened scholar, someone who has spent a lifetime studying and educating himself about the Quran and the hadith of Ahlul Bayt, practicing what he's learned and also educating others, or that individual is a muta'allimun ala sabil al-najat, or that individual is someone who is learning. If he hasn't become a scholar, he's someone who is studying on the path of salvation. And so this is what we find Muhammad Ismail Dulabi, we can say that in some sense he's categorized as that. But at the same time, he goes over into that higher fold where he's alim al-Rabbani, meaning that he is practicing what he has learned. And not only that, he's educating others. The third category that Imam Ali he mentions, he says, Hamadun Yura'a. What we can say in English, they say, these are like the riffraff. These are individuals who do nothing with their life, do nothing serious. They do not try to connect themselves with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But rather they flow with the wind. Wherever the wind is going, then they go. Wherever the trend is going in the world and life, then they just follow behind, not with any particular understanding of that. It says, oh no, everyone is doing this. So that person goes along with the flow. And this categorization of Imam Ali alayhi wasalam, especially when he talks about the alim al-Rabbani and that student who's on the sabil al-najat, in fact is a reflection of the statement of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, where he told his ummah, he's speaking to all of us, he says, Kunu Rabbaniyin bima kuntum tu'allimuna bil-Qur'an. He says, be among those individuals who are Rabbani, be among those individuals who are enlightened, among those individuals who are spiritual, among those individuals who are religious and righteous. And how do we do that? The Prophet says, Bima kuntum tu'allimuna bil-kitab. By virtue of that which you teach from the Quran. In other words, as you learn the Quran, you put the Quran in practice. As you learn the Quran, you share the Quran. Either you share it by simply your actions and people see that, oh, well, your actions are in line with the Quran, or you share with others what you've learned about the Quran. And this is one of the things that Hajj Dulabi, he would also do. And I'll just end with one of the advices that he had. And it's very beautiful advice. And we can see that how his advice also, it is a reflection of the words of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus salatu. To give you one example, that Imam Ali alayhi afdalus, he says that every so Imam Ali says every day we should recite the Quran. Imam Ali says, even if it's just, he says 50 verses of Quran. Understand that communication from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to humanity. So Hajj Dulabi, whose path of irfan and connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as I stated, it was very simple, because he himself was a simple man. He wasn't someone who was speaking to people with a lot of philosophical ideas, to do a lot of different actions that, in order to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to do all of these things. No, he was very simple. And he had a very simple message to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is one of the special things about Hajj Dulabi, that his path to irfan is very simple. And it's simply to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he stated that, how do we connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He says, the Quran is nur. He says the Quran is light. The Quran is illuminated. He says, so therefore, read the Quran. Connect yourself with the Quran. He says, if you're a person who can understand the Quran, and this is for whatever language that you can understand the Quran in. MashaAllah, if it's Arabic, then MashaAllah it's Arabic. If it's one of the translations, so then it's the translation. He says that if you have that ability to read and understand the Quran, and again, Dulabi, as we stated, very simple man, a farmer. And of course, he knew that at that time, he was born in 1904, perhaps there were people who were farming and they couldn't read. So this is why it's important to understand again, how simply his message was to connect to Allah. He says, if you can read and understand the Quran, read the Quran. Whatever language, read the Quran and understand the Quran. He said, and if you cannot read, in other words, you cannot read the words and understand the words, whatever language it is, he says, simply look at the Quran. He says, look at the Quran. And he says, he says, I know that there are some people who perhaps they have been born with the disability that they can't see, they're blind. He says, and so what would you do? He says, touch the Quran. He says, because the Quran is nur, it's light. He says, and if you read the Quran and you can comprehend it, you can simply look at the Quran, you can't read or write, but you look at the Quran, you look at this nur, or even you touch it, he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will enlighten you. He will, again, give you a connection. He says, this is how you connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, this, perhaps you could say that the higher form, again, for those individuals who have that ability, as Imam Ali says, read 50 verses, but he's saying, look, even for the simple person, don't think that, oh, well, I can't do that, I can't achieve this. He says, look, here's the most simplest form. Whatever you can read and understand, you just read from Quran. He says, and do it every day. He says, there shouldn't be a day that goes by, and this is what I do. There shouldn't be a day that goes by that you don't even just look at the Quran. Even if you, perhaps you're busy. Maybe you don't have time to maybe read. He says, look at the Quran. Just look at it. And connect with the Quran. Connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Touch the Quran. Connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is, again, a very simple method, a very simple way of gaining a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, gaining ma'rifah, so much so that this individual, as we mentioned, very simple individual, that not only known among just the common people, but among the ulama of his time. That yes, this individual is an arif, he's connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He continues to guide us by the wisdom of His Quran and the Ahlul Bayt, and those who have followed in the path of Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afsalatu wasalam, so that we may be enlightened by the Quran, we may be enlightened by the guidance from Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Wa akhir da'wana an alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wal asri innal insana lafi khusr. Ila alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat wa tawassaw bil haqqi wa tawassaw bis sabr. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين الرسول المصدد المصطفى الأمجد أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين الأوصياء أوصيائه وأولياء الله أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب والحسن بن علي والحسين بن علي وعلي بن حسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن القائم المنتظر المهدي. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. وعجل الله تعالى فرجه. أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أنزلناه في ليلة القدر وما أدراك ما ليلة القدر ليلة القدر خير من 1000 شهر تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل أمر سلام هي حتى مطلع الفجر صدق الله العلي العظيم. As this blessed month of Jumada al-Thani is coming to a close, in fact, there's only 1 week left in this blessed month. And inshallah, we can conclude this month in the best of manners. and enter into one of the most sacred months that is upon us in about a week, and that is the month of Rajib. And we know that this month of Rajib is considered like the month of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the month of Rajib. When we look at it, it is also the month in which Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi salatu wasalam, in which he was born. That he was born in. In this month, which is the month of Jumada al-Thani, we celebrated in the very beginning the birth of Fatima Zahra, salamullah alayha. So these two blessed months and these two sacred births is like nur ala nur, is light upon light. In one of the books of dua and supplications, it is recorded by Sayyid ibn Tawus, one of our scholars who have collected a lot of hadith, and a lot of his collections of hadith focus on ibadah and connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He mentions about a prayer that should be recited in the month of Jumada al-Thani. And he doesn't mention exactly when, whether at the beginning or middle or the end. And so I wanted to share this because we are at this end of the month. We have 1 week left. And if we find a moment to make this prayer, again, connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, building the foundation of our taqwa, our connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it would be a tremendous job that we can do. And the barakah and the blessing that is in this ibadah is immense. So this prayer is a 4 rakat prayer. Again, you pray it two by two, just like we pray any mustahab salat. It's 2 rakats, you finish that, and then you pray another 2 rakats. But in this ibadah, again, it will take some time, so make sure that you have a free moment. And sometimes we find that, and we will, instead of connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we'll watch a 2-hour movie, 3-hour movie, but taking time to make this ibadah, which may take an hour, or even take less, depending on your recitation. So in this 4 rakat salat, in the first rakat, one would recite Surah Al-Hamd once, and then Ayat Al-Kursi once, Surah Al-Qadr 25 times, inshallah. So it's recited 25 times, Surah Al-Qadr. In the second rakat, you recite Surah Al-Hamd once, Surah Al-Takathur once, and Surah Tawheed 25 times. In the third rakat, you will recite Surah Al-Hamd once, and then you will recite Surah Al-Kafirun once, and then you will recite Surah Al-Falaq 25 times. In the fourth rakat, you will recite Surah Al-Hamd once, and Surah Al-Nasr once, and then you will recite Surah An-Nas 25 times. Now, we don't have time to go through all the details of, again, the meaning of these the surahs and things like that. But what is interesting, you see this pattern, that in each of the rakat, you're reciting one of the surahs of the Quran 25 times. So you start with reciting Surah Al-Qadr 25 times, and just as a reminder that Surah Al-Qadr, what is the blessings of reciting Surah Al-Qadr? One of those blessings of reciting Surah Al-Qadr, as Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, he points out, one, it's reminding us of that revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That what has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed? قُلْ إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَاهُ فِي لَيْلَةِ الْقَدْرِ. And then Imam Sadiq, he says that if we truly understand, and again, this is where the connection to this blessed month of Jumada al-Thani, it becomes very clear that, perhaps there's something there, that why we're reciting, and in that first rakat, we're reciting Surah Al-Qadr 25 times. Imam Sadiq, he says that that individual who truly understands Fatima Zahra, salamullah alayha, who knows Fatima haqqu ma'rifatiha, then that person has truly understood Laylatul Qadr. What is Laylatul Qadr? So that blessed night that is greater than 1,000 months, خير من ألف شهر, He says, if you understand that, you will understand Fatima Zahra. Assalamu alaikum. And this is the month of Fatima Zahra where we remember her. In the second rakat, you're reciting Surah Tawheed 25 times. And of course, Surah Tawheed, the blessing of that is it reminds us of the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our aqeedah, our iman. It is, and the cause of all causes. Surah Tawheed, when you recite Surah Tawheed, one of the blessings and barakah, as is mentioned in our hadith, is that by reciting it, you are granted khayrul dunya wal akhirah. So if you want khayrul dunya wal akhirah, recite Surah Tawheed. In fact, as one of our imams, he mentioned to, and I believe it was Imam Sadiq, alayhi salatu wasalam, he mentioned to one of his companions, he says that if you recite your 5 prayers, daily prayers, he says, and you don't recite Surah Al-Ikhlas, Qul huwallahu ahad, in at least one of those prayers, he says, lasta min al-musallin. He says, okay, yes, you've fulfilled this salat, maybe the shara'i salat, and perhaps it's connected. He says, but that salat is not complete. That you must recite Surah Al-Ikhlas. He says, if you want the grandness of that salat, this is the importance of Surah Tawheed. In the third rakat, where we recite Surah Al-Falaq 3 times, this surah, as it is known to be a surah of protection, that you protected from anything that is evil, anything that is wicked, someone who is trying to do something to you. And likewise, Surah An-Nas as well, to save you from the evil of men and jinn. It is a form of protection. And quite often, it is recommended to recite these 2 in conjunction with one another, Surah Al-Falaq and Surah An-Nas. Once you finish these 4 rakats, one would go into sajda, or once you make the taslim, then you recite this very short dua, Subhanallah wa alhamdulillahi wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar, 70 times. Then you make salat ala Muhammad, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, also 70 times. Allahumma eghfir lilmu'minin wal mu'minat, and you ask for the forgiveness of the believers 3 times. And then you go into sajda. And in sajda, you recite 3 times, Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum, Ya Dhal Jalali Wal Ikram, Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen. And then you will ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for your hajat. What is it? Whatever you need. And it's stated that whoever performs this action, that they will be protected until the next year. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant that individual khayrul dunya wal akhirah. Their children will be protected. Their wealth will be protected. Their life will be protected. And if that person happens to pass away in that year, they die with the status of being shaheed. And it doesn't mean that you won't face any difficulties. Yes, life is about difficulties. But by doing this ibadah, that you are protected, you're in the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and inshaAllah, whatever those challenges that you will face from, this Jumada al-Thani to the next Jumada al-Thani, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant you forgiveness, protection. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the reappearance of Imam Zaman. We ask him to make us among his helpers, his companions, and those who sacrifice their lives for him. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins and cover our shortcomings. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant our needs, to have mercy upon our deceased ones. We ask him to cure those who are ill among our friends and family members. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم اغفر ذنوبنا واستر عيوبنا وقضي حوائجنا واشف مرضانا ورحم أمواتنا وعجل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان واجعلنا من أعوانه وأنصاره والمستشهدين بين يديه وتحت لواء بحق محمد وآله الطاهرين.